Kia ora and welcome back to We Do B2B. We are at Southern SaaS 2024 for the Southern SaaS sessions. Joining us now is, I'm going to call our next guest the international keynote speaker of the day. She ran a session just before lunch as well as a panel, and having walked the floor over lunch, I can tell you that Tatyana's presentation is the talk of everyone. It's the talk of the town, and it's the topic that is on everyone's lips. So Tatyana Mamut, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I hope I got the pronunciation of your name right there.
Yes, Tatyana is perfect.
Okay, and surname-wise, how did I go?
Oh, Mamut.
Okay.
Tatyana Mamut. I'm the only one on the interwebs, so T Mamut, and you'll find me.
So you're joining us from the US?
From San Francisco.
From San Francisco, and your first time here in New Zealand?
It is, and I am so glad I arrived a week early to be able to see your fantastic country, to be able to have dinner with some of the other startup founders last night. I'm just like thoroughly impressed, and Aliona is trying to get me to move here. I'm like 50-50 on it right now.
I think people don't necessarily realize that, we're all the way down here on the bottom of the world, but it's actually not that far.
And you're always in the future when you're in New Zealand.
That is true.
So you're literally living in the future, and so being one day ahead of the rest of the world is pretty darn amazing.
I'm from the UK, and I love sending messages back to my family when it's their birthday saying, "Happy birthday from the future."
That's exactly right. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Okay, so I gave you a little bit of an introduction just before, just to kind of cover off on, I suppose, the gravitas that you bring to the event and to this conversation today. So I'll try and recap on some of your background. You have a PhD in, let me get this right, economic and cultural anthropology.
Yes, that's right.
And you are founder and CEO of Wayfound.
Yes.
Right. Take us through that journey. Who's Tatyana?
Yes, so I'm often asked, why is an anthropologist working in tech? And before this, I was also an SVP of product at Pendo, Chief Product Officer at Nextdoor, which is a big social media platform in the United States, Australia, and Europe. And director at AWS, building new tech products, VP at Salesforce, leading Lightning Experience. So People are like, how does somebody with an anthropology background do this? And what I really want people to understand, and maybe this is where our conversation will go, is that the hard problems in technology are not technical problems. Especially when you have AWS and Azure and Google Cloud, a lot of the technology is pretty much 80% there and off the shelf. The hard problems in technology are people problems. And it's specifically identifying what are the things are your customers, who are people, will love and pay for, and how do you bring together teams of people, organize them, and motivate them to build those things for your customers. So all the hard problems in tech are fundamentally people problems. And who better than an anthropologist to deal with those problems?
I completely agree. I think it's a fantastic perspective on everything. I mean, it breaks, certainly your trajectory breaks from that traditional view of building tech from the tech perspective. And I think certainly listening to the conversation over here at lunch, some people have definitely picked up on some of the things that you've been talking about there around the role of humans in solving human problems and using tech as the enabler for it. So take us through some of the cliff notes from the keynote that you've just given. So what were the hot buttons?
So the hot buttons, I kind of walked through the trajectory of why a lot of people are saying, what's this big new AI thing? We've had AI for over a decade. We have, but it was a very different type of AI than what happened in 2022 when ChatGPT came out, because before then, especially, really, whether you're a consumer or whether you're a B2B, you were doing predictive domain-specific AI, where you were bringing big data sets together around a particular domain and then trying to predict what is the next best step, for example, or what is the next best piece of content to serve the user. And now we've kind of leapfrogged into this generalized and generative AI framework. And the big opportunity is to take those generative capabilities and bring them into domain-specific contexts. Because a big part of what I talked about is the hallucination problems
Okay.
around generative AI right now. And it's where you get hallucinations when you don't have a context-specific, domain-specific problem to ground the answer in, right? So OpenAI is probabilistic, right? ChatGPT, all the LLM models, they're probabilistic. And when you have all the different data in the world that you're drawing from for the answer, you're not grounding it in a particular data set that you want.
Okay.
You get a lot of possibilities for, in that probability sort of tree and in that logic chain, to go off the rails.
Right.
So there's a lot of value in taking that model and then helping to ground it in a domain-specific context. So talked a lot about that.
Okay.
And then we talked a little bit about agents, where agents are going. Wayfound is an agent platform, which is starting with a lead gen agent. So anyone who is selling a product that is more about consultative selling. So you need to, do some discovery with your customer. You need a high touch kind of conversation. You don't want to put a dumb chatbot in front of people.
No, quite.
Right? You want a solution where you can feed in a lot of information about your product. You can create a lot of prompts and directives around how to answer conversations, how to address your customer.
Yep.
And then you start to really qualify them, do a little bit of a discovery call, conversation. And then when you pass that MQL, that marketing qualified lead, or that lead, to the next step, you have context about what the customer is interested in, what they care about. So that's Wayfound. And then we're actually building a lot of guardrails and a lot of ways to build insights so that these agents get smarter and smarter and smarter and start to supervise other agents as they come online. Okay. So that's the cliff notes of the talk.
And so your role as founder and CEO at Wayfound, how far into that journey are you?
So this is coming out of a venture studio.
Yes.
So I've been part of the venture studio for about a year.
Yep.
This is the second venture to come out of the studio. And so I've been advising for a while, but this is really my passion area of understanding how AI agents as autonomous decision makers and autonomous actors will start to behave, how to create a culture for them that is aligned with human needs and norms and values.
Wow.
And so this is an opportunity to do that in an enterprise context.
Wow.
So it's actually a pretty amazing situation.
It is, and now that you kind of explained some of that, the anthropology piece just makes perfect sense to me, and that seems to be one of the topics on everyone's lips out there at the moment is the role of human connection and the role of humans in that whole scenario. So how do you see the lines in the sand between what belongs in the AI camp and what belongs in the human camp? Maybe it's a general question, but what are your thoughts?
One, I think none of us know, and so I'm going to have some provocations. As the other piece of my talk was really around some provocations about what the future may bring. So our assumption that humans are really good, and especially leaders, are really good at synthesizing information and making decisions, right? You see where I'm going?
I see where you're going.
AI is probably going to be much better at synthesizing information and making decisions, especially for the last 10 years. We've been telling organizations and leaders they need to be data-driven. There needs to be data-driven decision making, right? And so leaders have asked for more dashboards and more metrics and making all of their decisions confined to data and metrics. AI is going to be much better at data-driven decisions. However, when no data exists to make decisions, when we're inventing something completely new, that's where human intuition, human emotion, and human embodied knowledge comes into play. So leadership needs to shift from people who are data-driven decision makers to people who are intuitive,
Okay.
Think like intuitive decision makers who respect that the data-driven recommendation will be made by AI. So they'll be able to take both of those things into account to drive forward new innovation, new direction, new decision, and be able to motivate their organization and their employees to actually go after those new things. And that's a human energy thing. That's a human embodiment thing, right? That's a human charisma thing.
So take me through human embodied knowledge, because you said that and I don't understand what that means, but I'd like to.
Okay. So we say in a trite way that 90% of communication is nonverbal. What does that mean? If AI, LLMs are fundamentally verbal. So if you're relying on decision making to be based on any kind of verbal or visual kind of data points that you have in terms of text, images, or video, AI is good at that. But of course, embodied communication, right? The way that you're sitting, the way that we're smiling at each other, the way that we're holding eye contact, which communicates something to us, is unmined in terms of what is leadership and what does it mean to make decisions. When you're sitting with a customer, I always tell people, when you can, go to the customer's organization and shadow them, because you're going to see and learn so much more than if you do a phone call or a Zoom call with them. Because you're going to see them in their natural environment. You're going to see how they interact. They're going to let their guard down. And then there's going to be all of this communication that would not be captured in a purely verbal form. And so that's what I mean by embodied knowledge. And, you know, a lot of people are working on embodied agents like Jim Fan and NVIDIA, but those are like in video game contexts. And, you know, the robots right now really don't work in terms of the way that it's not really, they're all being like remote controlled by humans and things like that. So we're a long way from embodied communication. We're a long way from embodied knowledge being able to be sensed or transmitted by machines.
And I would imagine that the sensing component comes before the transmission component there, right? You're able to, and you're talking about the ability to study patterns and recognize behaviors, but to then generate and replicate those in a way that is, you know, intelligible to someone like you or I, that's a whole nother level apart.
Possibly. I don't know. I don't know which one is easier to replicate. I actually think it's easier to communicate charismatically, probably, because there's like NLP stuff and anyway, there's techniques that you can use, like if you watch Trump speak, right, he does certain things with his body and the way that he speaks that draws people in, whereas if you were just to read the transcript of it, it would be quite ridiculous. But there's something about the transmission of what he's doing. But then in terms of sensing other people, picking up their cues, picking up their energy, when you can sense if somebody is nervous, you can sense if somebody is open, you can sense if somebody is really happy or if they're trying to fake happy. I
mean, even the way that you're delivering this piece right now, I'm seeing the subtleties, which, you know, it's going to take a machine a wee while to learn. So what does that then mean in terms of the implications for leadership? Because you talked about the switch from leadership being, you know, data-driven to, you know what, let a machine do that piece because it's going to do that far more comprehensively and see things that you can't. So where then does the role for leadership sit?
Right now, we optimize for leaders who are big brains. We have to optimize for leaders that are big hearts.
I thought you were going to say that, and I hope you were going to say that. Okay, cool. Take me through why.
So, right now, LLMs are huge neural networks. They're huge brains. We all know what happens if we just make decisions with our brains and not our hearts. We get suboptimal outcomes. We get purely self-interested outcomes. And so we need to combine the two aspects of what we know makes for good outcomes for humans and for humanity, which is the combination of intelligence and deep empathy. And so we need not nice leaders, but deeply empathetic, deeply human, big-hearted leaders who are courageous enough to step outside of just the big brain data-driven paradigm and say, look, there's a lot of data. Absolutely, I'm not like ignoring the data. The data is here. I've got an AI co-pilot that's helping recommend things, but I'm bringing the heart and the soul of what it is that we're trying to bring into the world.
Now, for the host of a B2B marketing podcast, that just like sets all sorts of fireworks off in my brain, because immediately I'm thinking, okay, cool. There was fear initially within the marketing camp around AI taking jobs from the marketing skill set. And there will definitely be areas where, you know, that generative AI is able to just produce a whole raft of pretty good stuff. But then when it comes to something with heart, with feeling, with emotion, with daring even, I think that the human element of that is a space where marketers in particular can and should be driving things forward. What would you say around that? What's the role of the marketer in championing that empathetic way of thinking and leading?
I think marketing has made a shift way too much on the data-driven side in the last 20 years.
Yep.
See, good nonverbal communication. And now there's an opportunity to really say, okay, we've got that. We've got tools for that. Now, where are the places that are unexplored, where we can use our human intuition so that we can actually have the efficiency in the data and the performance metrics and all that kind of stuff handled by AI? And let's lean into our humanity and invent new ways of messaging and communication as the world changes. There's a huge opportunity for humans to create things that have never been able to be created before. Because AI is great at reconfiguring things that have been already done before based on data that exists.
Yep.
But if no data exists,
what can it use to learn from?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep regurgitating stuff from the past in different configurations, sure, and it might look new.
Yeah.
But the truly novel and unique that is not based on past data is where we have to have the courage to say, this is what the data tells us, this is what, this is a consideration, and yet the world has changed, and this is something completely new that we can create.
So maybe this is a question that nobody has the answer to, because it is very much, put in the spyglass and looking into the future. But if we're talking about AI handling a lot of the computational, shall we say, side of things, the predictable, replicable, logical, not every human being is an empath. And certainly in the context of marketers, not everyone is that way inclined. What does that mean for looking forward for the division of labor? How can there be a position for everyone in the future if we do have a lot of that grunt work kind of covered and the role is inherently empathetic?
So to be empathetic is not to be an empath. So that's the first thing.
Okay.
To be empathetic is to be fully human.
Okay.
I believe, and my empirical observations have shown this to be true, just with me, like I'm a very, left brain thinker in general. And I am not an empath. But I have learned to lean into my full humanity, especially in the last couple of years, meaning that I rely less on spreadsheets and me doing the analysis off of just computational. Because remember, what computers are really good at is computing.
Yeah. Kind of goes with the territory, goes with the title.
People don't realize that somehow, right? You don't need humans to compute. The computers are really good at that. Although, computers used to be humans who were really good at computing, right? And then, anyway, so to what I mean by leaning into your full humanity is there are a lot of things that we have forgotten how to do as humans in the last 200 years for the Industrial Revolution that we are going to rediscover. And this is not necessarily part of the B2B podcast, but maybe there could be amazing, new ideas here. But we used to know a lot more about energy work, how to use energy between humans, right? To like heal each other, to find different things, right? We're finding a lot of, it's appropriate we're doing this in New Zealand because a lot of indigenous communities really leaned into healing work that is really more about using our full powers as humans. In the Western world, we have completely shut that down. So what I know is that the work of the future looks very little like the work of today. So if people think that they're going to be like typing and coding and sitting in front of screens, like producing words and, layouts for magazines, no. But are they going to be creating things through energy? Are they going to be rediscovering new ways that, humans, again, have shut down in our capabilities and our abilities? Absolutely. So one of the things I talked about is the fact that, 2 years ago, I have 2 kids, 2 girls, so 10 and 13, and I originally signed them up for coding camp. For last summer. US last summer. So, and ChatGPT came out, and I said, forget it, girls, you're not going to coding camp. And I signed them up for public speaking and sailing. And the reason why public speaking and sailing is because there's something in public speaking that helps you understand your body, helps you work with your body to communicate, helps you feel the energy of the audience, and helps you project your own energy. And then in sailing, there's something about being on the water in nature. You sail.
I love the water. I don't sail, but
you surf.
Before I had 4 kids.
Yes, me too, before I had 2 kids. So, but you get it, right? You're in the ocean, you're sensing, right? You're part of the ocean, you're sensing with your body. This is about embodied knowledge. And you are getting information in a way that kind of bypasses your sort of rational, logical mind to catch the wave. To know when to stand up, to feel, right, the entire pulse of Gaia and the planet, right, and all of nature. And that's what I believe humans will need to rediscover.
It's such a fascinating conversation, and it's one that producer Louis and I talked about on the way up here. We were talking about the Inca Trail, actually, of all things. And he was just talking about, getting to the top of, Machu Picchu and looking at what this ancient civilization had been able to construct and plan and manifest with this deep-seated knowledge that's just
gone. We could not do it. We could not build the Great Pyramids now. We could, even getting to New Zealand, right, from Polynesia or wherever Coupe came from or whatever, we couldn't do that on a boat with our 4 daughters, he did,
As soon as the batteries ran out on the GPS, you'd be stuffed as opposed to navigating by the stars. And I think what I find really interesting in this is that, so I'm not from New Zealand, I've chosen to live here, I'm from the UK. We do a lot of work, I suppose, with Kiwi businesses who are reaching into new markets overseas. And one of the things that I think I always reflect on about this country and the way that it's, what's the right way to put it, the ideals that it upholds and its identity. It's deeply seated still in the tribal and indigenous thinking. Indigenous is the right word. The indigenous thinking and philosophies of the Māori. So when we look at the way that innovation happens in New Zealand, it's so heartening to hear you talk about this future, because we have these values like kaitiakitanga and manakitanga, which are deeply rooted in protecting the energy of others. There's a guardianship component to it, which speaks to protecting land and culture and people. So I won't lie, I've got a grin on my face the size of the moon, because what you're talking about in this vision of your future is something that I feel our little tiny nation here in New Zealand is actually, do you know what? I think we would be closer to remembering some of that indigenous human embodied knowledge as you talk about than a lot of other Western civilizations.
Absolutely. And I have to say, in the Bay Area right now, in San Francisco, people are yearning for that, right? And they're going, I mean, often they go to like immediately to psychedelic drugs because they try to somehow get in touch, right, with indigenous spirits, and that's where they go. I've tried it, it's fine. But I agree with you, like the being in a society, in a community, in a culture where that is, you know, at the ground truth level of how people respect and are building, there's something really special about that. And it's something that people in the Bay Area are striving to try to do, but we don't have that culture, right? And it's no accident that the people who are trying to who are building AI startups right now are the same people who are doing ayahuasca, you know, like every month, you know? It's because we understand that there needs to be this bridging right now between this, you know, ancient knowledge and wisdom traditions and this like AI intelligence. We intuitively know that. And this country can bring that forward in a way that I think very few can.
I feel like we should make that into a poster that just goes out worldwide and talks about New Zealand, because honestly, that warms my heart to hear that. I really didn't expect this conversation to end up going down this route. I don't know what I actually, having come out of the room and hearing everyone talking about the human connection and the human component of AI and the role going forward. I don't know what I expected the conversation here to entail, but I'm genuinely glad that we've had it.
Okay. Well, one other thing that I hope people remember is that if you're building, you know, in the near term, a B2B startup, you know, B2B SaaS startup.
Thank you for bringing it back into a specific domain, back to the...
back there. You are selling to humans. Companies don't buy products. Humans buy products. Companies don't write checks. Humans write checks. So right now, the thing to understand and to remember is that you are always selling to a human being, understanding that human's values. And again, the direction that we are going in, and even in this conversation, helps you to remember that most humans feel a sense of this connection to energy and to wisdom traditions, and they're starting to sense this, but there's very few places that they can be honest about it and open about it. And if we appeal to that side of humanity and say, we have a great tech product, and this is all the compliance that we have, and this is all the technology that we have, and we have this grander vision of ethics and humanity and humanity's role in what I call a multi-sapiens future. Multi-sapiens, because we are Homo sapiens. And then we've got AI sapiens. Like sapiens means thinking, right? Sapiens means intelligence. So we're going to have multiple intelligences needing to coexist. And we are today creating organizations in the best case scenario, we're creating organizations that we can meet where they are with their business needs today and drive us together to this really productive multi-sapiens future.
And I particularly like the role of people in that, the Homo sapiens role in that, of being the people who being the form of knowledge or the form of wisdom that upholds the ethical standards. And I think if you look at how business has evolved over the last, call it 40, 50, 60 years, but you've seen that rise of purpose-led businesses really starting to come to the fore. And I don't think that they're quite there enterprise level yet. That's probably still got a way to go. But if you look at some of the emerging players in some of those spaces, there is a need and there is a drive for a connection to something more than just the functional. And when you talk about the, in that B2B context where you're selling to people, there still needs to be space for the inexplicable.
And if you think about, so I used to work at Salesforce, and if you've ever been to Dreamforce,
I
right?
haven't, but I'd love to.
Okay.
But yeah.
Dreamforce is not about SaaS software. I mean, it is, but it's about this like vision of the world, right? That Mark Benioff is trying to sell to you. And Mark has this Ohana, right? Which is a Hawaii, like very closely Hawaiian, very
Polynesian,
yes, like very close to Maori. And so he's, selling this vision of the future, which is larger than SaaS software, but SaaS software plays a role in it because we need to operate our businesses differently. We need to have confidence in how we're driving forward. And what people ultimately buy is a vision of the future and a hope, right, that you will be a partner to get there, to their desired vision. And remember, these are humans that you're selling to. And sure, a lot of humans will just like put on their blinders and say, yes, but I need to make this business decision right now. However, would you rather be a Salesforce who's, selling a dream of what the future can be? Or would you rather be, some, Oracle, right? Where you're just like checking the boxes, right? In the RFPs.
Yeah.
You can decide, right? And again, for Wayfound, we're deciding to try to, again, meet the business needs where they are right now with a great lead gen agent and build a whole platform for ethics and ethical AI supervision for enterprises to feel confident in facing the future without fear.
I feel like I'm facing the future without as much fear as I had coming into this conversation. I won't lie. What I'm taking away from this is I have this feeling that now, AI having been this large, unless you're deeply in it, it's still this sort of unknown. It's what's it going to do? How's it going to change? Everything else like that. What I take from you is this confidence that says, let it do its thing and let people focus on being better people and actually understanding people and dialing into some of those deeper connections that have been lost along the way. And that gives me an enormous amount of hope.
Yes.
It really does.
Yeah. And we also have to have leaders who help keep AI on the rails.
Yep.
Right? And then, let it do what it's good at. But let's bring AI into our culture and our cultural norms and our cultural values. And, one of the stories that I often tell with people is, you've probably traveled around the world.
I've done a bit of travel, yeah.
You've been to Asia? Where name some locations.
Okay, so I'm from the UK. UK, I lived in Germany for just over a year, traveled through Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, spent a lot of time in Europe, China. Not as much time in Asia as I'd like, but I'm going to Japan in October. Okay. So those are some places.
So when you travel and you meet a stranger, what do they do? It's not a trick question. What do they like? How do people greet you, no matter where you are in the world?
With a smile.
With a smile. Sometimes they ask you your name.
Yep.
They ask you where you're from.
Yep.
And sometimes they might ask you if you're hungry.
Those are the good ones, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. But they smile at strangers. They ask you your name. They ask where. So this happens universally to everyone, right? And I've been to Ethiopia, I've been to Kenya, Cambodia, Mongolia, all through, Russia and Siberia, Peru, Argentina, I've been in lots of places, okay? It's universal.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's deep wiring, right? That's something which comes from a common structure. We're all built somewhere. We're all built the same somewhere along the line is what I take from that.
But there are some cultures that don't do that. Like in Soviet times, people would not do that with strangers, right? They would be very wary of strangers.
Yep.
So it's not biological wiring, and there are some people who don't do that at all.
Yep. Absolutely.
So it's not biological wiring. But there's something common in our humanity that we all teach our children, which if I didn't ask you that question, you wouldn't realize that was a universal human trait, probably.
It wouldn't have dawned on me, no.
So that's the possibility, that's the heart. That's the heart that I'm talking about. That's the sort of other part, because if we were entirely self-interested creatures, we would never stop and smile and talk to a stranger from a different country who is obviously from, they have nothing to offer us.
Yeah.
There is no reason that you're wasting my time. It's a waste of my time and my energy and my effort to smile and to talk to you. Yet it happens all over the world.
And people happily do it.
And people are happy to do it.
Yeah.
So that is the type of heart and the type of humanity that we need to cultivate, and that we need to build into AI, so that AI also, when it meets a new human,
Yes.
its initial natural inclination, somehow hardwired into it, or at least acculturated into it, is a desire to be helpful and nice and caring to other humans.
And I just think about, you talked about the things that we train our kids to do, and the number of times that I tell my children to be kind. And that's the one overarching thing that for me is, if you do nothing else, be kind. And to think that's guidance that the AI also needs. That's an amazing parallel.
That's exactly right. And we need to remember that, and remember that a kind AI, one that is part of this larger ecosystem of humanity. And by the way, that also means we can't treat them like slaves, because we know what happens when we treat other intelligent species like slaves. Does not end well.
Does not go well, no.
So that's the other thing. We can't treat them like slaves. We can't treat them like servants. But yet we need to bring them into our culture, be kind to them. Always say thank you when you're interacting with ChatGPT.
It's such a and I notice myself doing it. I ask, please. I say, hey, could you just? It'll be really.
And I say thank you. Like, that was a really good answer.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So
or I really didn't like that answer. Like I interact with it, and maybe people might think I'm silly, but I think somewhere in the neural network, all of that feedback comes back.
Yeah. It has to.
I mean, just think about what happened with Tay, with Microsoft, one of the earliest chatbots that was released into the wild, and all the bad actors started interacting with it. So no matter how it was trained, it was retrained, right? RLHF, right? Learning through human feedback.
Yeah.
So what kind of human feedback are you giving to your AI?
It really resonates with me, the idea of investing in it like you would like one of your children. And it's because I've got so many of the bloody things, but but I think there's so much that as a parent you try and do, and you never get it right all the time, but the intent is always there.
Right.
And that feels like one of the takeaways here is make sure that you have the intent right in how you're training these things and how you're giving them feedback to them, because they're learning on a level that's far more than you can comprehend.
Absolutely. And when you're partnering with AI companies, when you're looking at, buying an AI agent or an AI agent platform, make sure that the energy that is there in the company and the ethical moral compass of the company aligns with yours, because it might really matter in terms of the outcomes that you get.
Wow. I could keep this conversation going for absolutely hours, but I think producer Louis is going to tell me he's going to run out of card space. Are there any last things that you would ask of our audience in terms of their learning, their appreciation, their adoption of AI, or anything in general?
There is a lot, I will be honest, there is a lot of fear right now about either falling behind, going too slow, yourself, or the world moving too fast and wanting to just sort of like ignore it. And I would say that it's incredibly, it takes a great amount of courage to move forward with heart and with intention and do what you know is right, but keep just moving forward and keep innovating and keep striving to build the world that you want your children to live in. And because we can optimize for short-term returns, but is that really the game that we want to play, as short-term games, right? No, we want to think about where are we going And how are we going to build the products and the solutions that are going to be one small step to getting to the world we want to build?
I just love that. That's been such an enjoyable conversation, Tatyana. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, I can tell straight away that this episode is going to be very, very well enjoyed and appreciated. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.